Okay, so we're here at Trekonderoga. Thank you for joining me, Michael Dante. So let's go again right to Robert Weiss, working with him, the Rocky Marciano boxing tale with Paul Newman.
Right.
What was it like working with him?
Oh, it was wonderful. Robert Wise, of course, was an Academy Award winning director. Very subtle, very highly intelligent, very creative, but he knew what he wanted, and he gave the actors the leeway to contribute what they thought about the scene and what they could do, what they couldn't do. But I was on the contract then.
Yeah.
I was on the contract to MGM. That was an MGM picture. So I didn't even have billing. It was Steve McQueen's first picture. I don't know if you know that.
No,
or
I didn't
not.
know that.
Oh,
no.
yeah. He played one of the, in the youth sequence, with Steve McQueen, Sal Mineo, Paul Newman, and myself, where we robbed the furs and the radios from the second story buildings. And it was my first job. So everything was new. It was wonderful. My introduction to Steve McQueen, we stayed at the Warwick Hotel in New York, and I was waiting at the awning. They had an awning at the Warwick Hotel. It was raining, you couldn't see across the street. And standing there, I was waiting for the limousine to drive me to location. And all of a sudden, this motorcycle pulls up in front, and he said to me in his jargon, he said, "Hey man, could you tell me where the company, the company of somebody up there like me is working?" And I said, "Well, if you wait 5 minutes, the limousine is going to take me. Are you working with it?" She said, "Yeah, I'm working in the film." And I said, "Well, why don't you park the bike at the hotel and come in the limousine?" He said, "No, man." And he was soaked and wet. He had nothing on at all that was water repellent.
Yeah.
And anyway, a couple minutes later, the limousine came. I got in the limousine, and he followed us down about a half hour away. And we get to the location, and had small dressing rooms, and there were two actors would fit in the dressing room. It was Steve and I were in the same dressing room.
Wow.
Well, I got in there, and I was dry as a bone, and had a couple towels waiting for us. And Steve came in, he was soaked and wet. He came, and water all over the floor. And I said, "Well, Steve, this is your towel, and you take my towel." He needed to get dry. He didn't have one dry piece of clothing on his body. He dropped his pants and so forth, put on the wardrobe, and he sat down. He said, "I'm Steve McQueen." I said, I'm Michael Dante.
Yeah.
And from then on, our careers went in separate directions.
Yeah.
And of course, he did great, and I went on to do what I wanted to do, and we both were very, as far as I'm concerned, I did everything I wanted to do and was as successful as I wanted to be.
Yeah, amazing. And any Paul Newman stories?
Yes, Paul was really a great lover of cars. He drove, and he and Steve were in Scouts when they were sitting on the side waiting for the setup. He and Steve would start talking about road racing, this kind of racing, this kind of a carburetor, this kind of, things I learned about automobiles. I learned more there in my life than any place in my lifetime between these two guys.
Wow.
And I sat between the two of them, and they talked so much about racing and motorbiking and so forth. And Paul invited Steve and I to have a beer after we finished working. And he could drink beer. He was that
Thin guy,
yeah, and drink beer and never put on weight.
Wow.
But the stories that they were telling and the education I got about racing was really a classic. Something I'll always remember the rest of my life. And I'm sorry that both of them were gone, because they were two wonderful actors and wonderful guys. About Paul Newman and the picture, in my opinion, it was the greatest performance he ever gave in his life, because I knew Rocky and I met Rocky, and we had a lot of fun, a great sense of humor. He was a character and a great champion. When I was a kid,
Yeah.
I watched on television when he fought Prissy Zale and so forth, and a lot of the Sugar Ray Robinson.
The icons,
and all great fighters. He was one of the greatest middleweights of all time. Great hitter. And for Paul, who to me was about as ethnic as a glass of milk. He was light-skinned and so forth, and what he did with that character and his characterization in that picture was such a departure from himself. I thought he was brilliant. And the boxing, all the boxing stuff he did, all the moves was just like Rocky did when Rocky was a champion. And Paul, to me, and I look at it, my God, I see it every once in a while on television and say, what a job he did. And it was nothing like Paul Newman. Rocky was one of these guys that was very mobile when he talked and so forth, great sense of humor, and he was all Italian. He was Italian.
Yeah.
And Paul, again, I'd say he was about as Italian as the chair over there.
Yeah.
And what he did with that characterization, and I just thought that was his greatest performance. I have never seen him be such a departure of any of himself, playing a character in any of his other movies.
Yeah, and the boxing in that. I've talked to a lot of professional boxers, and it's very, very authentic.
He was wonderful. He was just so perfect.
Now let's flash back to an earlier time. You were quite the baseball player.
Yeah, I was a bonus ball player in the Brave organization. I was the most valuable player in the New England Newspaper League. We played for the championship in the Boston field in Boston, Massachusetts, when the Braves were there. And it was just before they moved to Milwaukee. It was the last year. And we had to win 3 games in Boston to win the championship. We won all 3 games, and I was shortstop, and I was the most valuable player. And they signed me I was underage, so I had to come to my town of Stamford, Connecticut. I played for the Stamford Advocate. They were our sponsors, as well as the Braves. And they followed me, didn't let me out of their sight, signed me in the presence of my mom and dad, because I was a minor. And I was 17 going on 18 years of age. I signed for a $6,000 bonus.
Nice.
In those days, you couldn't get a dime over $6,000 unless they were prepared to have you sit on the bench in the big league roster for 2 years.
Wow.
And they weren't going to let a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid sit on the bench and give them more than $6,000. The following year, it changed. Harmon Killebrew got $100,000, and a couple other great ball players were signed for big bonuses. But that was the last year. The ceiling was $6,000. And I bought my family our first automobile, a 4-door Buick, white wall tires, black, beautiful car, radio heater, for $2,500. I mean, $2,500. You can't buy the hubcaps today.
No.
But anyway.
Times have changed money-wise, at least.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And because Dad was in the produce business, our transportation was by truck. And I had 3 sisters and a brother. So there were 7 of us in the family. So the car was such a gift to the family, and our lifestyle changed. And we were so happy to have something like this. And I said to Mom and Dad, I said, Mom, Dad, the rest of it, I maybe someday I might want to go to college, and something happened to me, I get injured. I want to start my second love as an actor and study drama at one of the universities. And they said, sure. So they put that aside for me. So I signed a contract, with him, and unfortunately, at the second year of my career, I injured my arm. So I floundered, and I wasn't the great prospect that they anticipated and I had hoped to be, because I was damaged goods.
It's
You
tough,
know, it's
right?
just one of those things. And the interim, I said, you know what? I've got to do something about this shoulder. I was getting no help from the doctors. They didn't know anything about kinesiology in those days. As sports medicine today has progressed more than any medicine in the last 15 and 20 years, as we all know. It's just amazing what they've done. So I was floundering, you know, I couldn't play, and I was brokenhearted, and I had to stay in shape, and I went from pillar to post to hang in there. And finally, Dr. George E. Bennett at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore operated on my shoulder, and it was interesting. He said, I won't charge you any fee for my services, and you stay here at Johns Hopkins Hospital if you have 2 Canadian trainers.
Really?
From the Montreal Alouettes, and I think of the Ottawa, one of the Ottawa teams.
Wow.
Hockey teams. He said they would like to observe, and with your permission, if I have your permission, they will observe what I'm going in to explore and see what we can do about salvaging your career. And I said, fine, that was great. And they happened to be Canadians.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was successful. He took out calcium. There were problems there with my bursa sac. And he said, now I want you to go to Florida, someplace where it's warm. And for a couple of months, allow it to heal, then start your training program, start throwing slowly and whatever. Now, what I did, I said, you know what? I've got to go. At the same time, I want to study drama. So I enrolled in the University of Miami of Florida and started my acting career there at the university as a drama major in the arts and sciences. So I did, and my arm was coming around, not really 100%. At the same time, I had my relationship with the Braves. They had given up on me, and I gave up on them because they couldn't help me, and I had my injury was I experienced the problems and the injured shoulder while I was under contract to the Braves. So what happened in the interim, the Washington Senators knew what a great prospect I was, invited me to spring training with them. That was 1955. And my roommate was a very good friend of Tommy Dorsey's.
Oh, wow.
And we got a phone call one night, and Mickey McDermott was the left-hander, played with the Red Sox, Yankees, and the Washington Senators and the Cardinals. And Tommy Dorsey, the great band leader, at that time had the Nestle Show, the All-American Show. Jackie Gleason and he worked together. And he was going through and doing one-nighters on the west coast of Florida. So Mickey got a call from him one night and picked up the phone and said, Tommy, what's going on? He said, I'm doing one-nighters here. I'm doing a one-nighter here in Florida. I was at Coral Gables with the university, and which was close to Miami. And he said, we got an off night tonight, we're off. And my manager, Tino Barzi, and I want to take you out to dinner. Let's talk. He loved baseball. And he was very good friends with Mickey McDermott. So Mick said, yeah, well, that'd be great. He said, do you mind if my roommate comes along? He's a ball player, and he's going to spring training in the big leagues with Washington Senators with us. And he said, oh, great, absolutely, come along. Fate as it was, we had hit it off that night, had a great dinner, and he said, you know, I'm going to be back in February, which was just before March 1st, to go to spring training in Orlando with the Senators. He said, I'll be doing one-nighters again up and down the coast, and I'll call you again and we'll all go to dinner. True to his word, Tommy came through again, and I was walking out of the room. I lived off campus. I had props in my hand. I was doing Golden Boy, Joe Bonaparte, at the theater, the Ring Theater at the university. It was a dress rehearsal, and I was walking out the door, and the phone rang, and it was just a jar. And I'm making this a point because if I didn't answer that phone call, it came through the door, and I said, oh, God, well, I better answer it. I have 15 aunts and uncles, 3 sisters and a brother, mom and dad. Something could happen, and if I don't do anything about it, you know, something could be tragic. I'll never forgive myself. Yeah. So I burst through the door, threw the props on the couch, and on the other end, I pick up the phone and say, hey, pal. I said, hey, TD. Now, that's what they did. Remember Jackie Gleason?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they were friends. If they addressed you that way, they accept you.
Yeah.
You were part of the gang. So he addressed me that way, and I knew that I was in.
You were in.
And I was in.
Oh. We've lost lighting. We're having our problems. Keep it running.
Okay.
There we go. We just need movement.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
I knew that I was in. I was
Yeah.
part of the group, and I felt great. And Tommy said, I've been trying to get you all day. He said, your phone number's, was not in the book. And Mickey, he had Mickey's number, and that was my contact with him in the first place. He said, I can't get a hold of Mickey, and I've been trying to get him all day, and I had to call administration office to get your number. And he said, I said to myself, wow, Tommy Dorsey spent all day trying to get my phone number. That's really something.
It's a compliment to you.
Yeah. I said, well, he said, look, we got a night off and we'll talk baseball again. Tommy always worked out with a Major League Ball club, or even a minor league club. If he was doing a venue in the town, he loved to go work out and get his exercise. And all the big league clubs and managers and general managers knew him.
Yeah.
So they, great Tommy Dorsey, of course you could come and work out, put on the uniform, and he was a first baseman. He loved to play first baseman. And there were 2 great artists in my lifetime I had the pleasure of knowing that loved baseball as much as their talents. That was Nat King Cole and Tommy Dorsey, and both of them liked to play first base. They were both first basemen. So he said, okay, he said, look, we'll pick you up and we'll go to dinner. I said, Tommy, I can't. I'll meet you for coffee afterwards. I said, I've got to rehearse. It's a dress rehearsal. I got to be there. And he said, well, okay, leave a pass, whatever it is, for Tino. That was his manager. Tino and myself, and we'll meet you backstage after you're finished. And we'll go to a late dinner. I said, Tommy Dorsey's going to go to a late dinner? He saw something in me that was special. And as he expressed himself later, and I was flattered by his remarks. True to his word, came backstage and finished. We went to dinner, and talking over dinner, he said, Michael, if your arm doesn't respond, I want to arrange a screen test for you. He said, I was on the contract to MGM a lot of years, and I know a lot of the producers, and I could arrange a screen test for you. He said, you got great presence, you got a great voice. He said, you have a lot of ability. All you have to do is learn the camera, and you'll be off and running, and I bet anything, dime to nickels, that you will be a star one day. And I have no qualms, doubt about it. He said, I helped several talented people in my lifetime, one in particular, and I believed in him, certainly in him, as much as I believe in you. He said, and he did okay. His name was Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
So I said, Tommy, you really think I have a future in Hollywood? He said, by all means, Michael. It's by all means. He said, I wouldn't tell you, I don't have the time for small talk. He was a very tough, straightforward personality. Great leader, wonderful leader. I watched and observed him with his band and his brother Jimmy, whom he never got along with. Anyway, here's my itinerary. I know where you're going to be. I got your phone number. And then he said, we're going to be doing 2 venues in Orlando where you're going to spring training with the Washington Senators at the Orlando Air Force Base in Rollins College. There was no Disneyland there in those days.
Yeah.
So he came up, he played those 2 nights, invited the ball club, and made me very popular because all the ball players saw that, I was an athlete, I was a handsome guy, and I was Tommy, I was his protege, and so forth and so on. But anyway, my arm didn't respond and to 100%, and we're breaking camp. So I decided, you know what? I'm only 20 years old. I got all the time in the world to come back. The arm heals and strengthens like we had planned to. I'll take a 2 weeks leave of absence to see what happens.
Yeah.
Got nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
I called Tommy and told Tommy they were doing the home show at the Pan Pacific Auditorium. He was going to be there for 2 weeks. He sent the tickets, the plane tickets for me. They picked me up at the airport. I tested out at MGM. MGM signed me to a contract. I never went back to baseball.
Wow.
30 films, 150 television shows later, and several awards, which are all in my book. All these the stories are in my book and anecdotes. It's a journey from 1955 to the present day. The first week on Amazon, I received 5 stars. This one, which is my autobiography, and all these stories, and one in particular, and of course with Paul Newman, Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
There's another wonderful, or 2 stories with Steve McQueen in the book. There's no smut whatsoever. It's a journey through all those years until about a year ago, and the film is not out yet. They have some problems with editing. It's called Unbelievable. It's a sci-fi comedy, and I have a very good, it's not a big part, but a good part. Some funny things in it, and it should be out hopefully within the next 4, 5, 6 months. It's called Unbelievable. And that's in there too, a story. And this is my latest book. This that just came out about 3 weeks ago. In the first 5 days, I have 5 stars.
Nice.
In that Winterhawk's Land, which is a sequel to the title role, Winterhawk.
You were Winterhawk.
I played Winterhawk.
Yeah.
And this is a sequel to it. And I'm proud to say I've kept him alive in the story of the Blackfoot Nation and Winterhawk with his the white woman that comes off with me in the end of the picture. And I was very successful in expressing my spirit and my love for the Native Americans and what Winterhawk did in relationship to the railroad. He didn't prevent the railroad from proceeding from the East Coast to the West Coast, but he deterred it for a while. And he kept his people alive because the railroad people and the guests on the plane were killing the buffalo for sport.
Yeah.
They didn't use it for food, clothing, and shelter. And that was everything to the Blackfoot Nation and his people. And the book is self-explanatory with the Winterhawk with the lance at the end of the railroad track. You know what the story's about, the conflict between Winterhawk and his people and the railroad people. Now, how many times have you seen a picture? You're watching a motion picture, and you're sitting there for 15, 20 minutes, and you ask yourself, what's this picture about? I don't know what this picture is about. This, you know, by just reading, just looking at the cover and the story inside. 5 minutes into the story, there's no dialogue. And when Winterhawk sees the railroad for the first time, throws that lance at the end of the track, and the music comes up, and you see and you know what this picture is about. It's a wonderful story. I'm so proud of it. And both of these books.
Now,
and,
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Winterhawk was what put you in connection with John Wayne, right?
Yes.
He really liked the film.
Oh,
And really liked
he
your
loved
role.
the film, and Pilar, his wife, they were doing a charity when they got a hold of me to share his favorite charity, which was child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it for 3 years. Patrick Wayne and Jack Kelly. Patrick did it with me 1 year, 2 years, and Jack Kelly, who played Maverick
Mm-hmm.
with James Garner
Yeah.
in the series. For 3 years, we raised over $50,000 just in the women's luncheon.
Mm-hmm.
The only men were there were the three of us and the proprietor of the restaurant. And they got Pilar, Mrs. Wayne, got all the gifts that were donated in order for us to auction off these items to raise the money. And we did every year consistently. And he had finally had got to see Winterhawk at his screening room at his home in Newport Beach, California. So he finally he said to me, he said, Michael, I got a property that you and I are going to do. It was wonderful. You were great in Winterhawk. I loved your performance. And we're going to do this yarn. He called it this yarn. And he said, I'm going away to Hartford, Connecticut, and I'll be back in about a week or so. And when I get back, he said, I'll be in touch. Well, they found out when he got back that when he was there that he only had a year to live, and almost to the day he died. A year later, I received this beautiful letter from him, a note from him, and he said, Michael, I've got some problems and I'll be in touch. But he never mentioned his illness. And he got this wonderful note, and I never heard from him again. And it was a sad day for me and all of his fans in America. He was a true patriot and a love of his country. It was undying, and he was a gentleman. I've got to share this with you. The first time I met him, he said, Michael, all I want to be is your friend. I said, thank you. I want to be your friend, Mr. Wayne, too. And he said, call me Duke. I said, yes, Mr. Wayne. I didn't have the courage to think that I deserved and earned it. I didn't earn it yet. And later on, of course, I did call him Duke, and we had a nice relationship. And it's just unfortunate we never got to do that picture because he died of cancer one year after he went to Hartford to learn that he had cancer.
Now let's talk Seven Thieves. Seven Thieves comes out the same year as Ocean's 11.
Right?
Just before it, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And in a sense, a very cool story with a great cast. Edward G. Robinson, Rob Steiger. So Seven Thieves, you got this great cast. And, you know, there's this one scene in particular as you're watching. You're outside with Rod Steiger walking the precipice of the Monte Carlo.
That was about 15 feet off the ground.
Really?
Yeah. And they had a mat screen in the back to make it look like the Monte Carlo. And Rod and I, and the ledge was well, I would say about this thick,
Mm-hmm.
just about that thick. And we had to move very cautiously and so forth. And then when I think about it years later, I thought about it, they only had a mat. You know those mats in the gym?
Yeah.
And the mat was like that. If we fell, it would be like hitting concrete.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been any help. You know, then later on, the stunt people had boxes and different apparatus to break a fall. And anyway, Rod, who was a wonderful actor to work with, when I had to come out on the ledge, and I had this fear of heights, and a phobia for heights. And when I came on, I improvised it, coming through the window, and I wouldn't come out. So Rod came out, and grabbed me and pulled me out, and we went out on the ledge. And I almost fell one time. And I'm looking at, you know, later on, I looked at it and said, you know what? You could have gotten killed. Rod, I said, look at that mat. That mat isn't worth the room it's taking up, and so forth. But it's a wonderful picture, and unfortunately, they didn't have the money for distribution at the time. 20th Century Fox was in deep trouble, and that's another story. And it's in the book. It's in the book. You'll love it because it's tragic because ours was an artistic piece compared to Ocean's 11, and it was nowhere near the film.
And another great director, Henry Hathaway.
Henry Hathaway, wonderful.
Now, I think they're waiting for you. You got some people wanting some signatures. So let's end with my favorite question. What's one of your favorite films?
Oh, my favorite film of all time, and one of my favorite actors, and I had the pleasure of meeting him when I was on the contract to MGM Studios, was Clark Gable. Clark Gable was a wonderful man and a great guy. He loved baseball. He loved to talk baseball. And he had a makeup man, Frank Barhoda. And Frank kept telling him when I was on the contract there, he said, when are you coming down and Clark wants to meet you? I said, Clark Gable wants to meet me? You kidding? He said, no, he loves baseball and he wants to talk to you. And you got to come down. He's doing some pickups with Lana Turner in a movie they did. So I did, and I got to know him, and he was wonderful. He was the king. And my favorite picture of all time was Going with the Wind.
Wow.
And of course, close second was Duke Wayne.
Yeah.
But they were giants. They were stars, personified.
They brought the industry out, and to the
bigger
masses.
Than life.
Yeah.
That's the best way I could really describe it. The king of their profession and bigger than life, and they made us all fantasize and enjoy the entertainment and the talent that they had to offer all those years. They were great.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. This is great.
My pleasure, Nikolai. Thank you very much.